Hello, I'm Alan, and welcome to today's edition of Alan's Cycling Adventures. Today's going to be a long, hot one. We're riding 101.8 miles, and the feels like temperature is supposed to get to above 100 degrees. So, should be an interesting day. I feel pretty good going into it. We'll see how it works out. If you enjoyed today's video, be sure to give it a thumbs up. Click the subscribe button to subscribe to my channel. And if you have any questions, comments, suggestions, or ideas for future editions of Alan's Cycling Adventures, be sure to leave them in the comments below. Well, without further ado, let's ride. First of all, my strategy this morning worked great. I made it to the start on time, which is a good thing. I'm hoping that I can duplicate the exact same strategy tomorrow morning and the next morning, because we have a continuing heat wave that we're riding through. And so we are starting early tomorrow and the next day as well. 6:45 a.m. start time, I believe, for both. I know it is for tomorrow. So hopefully my strategy will continue to work. That extra half hour, 45 minutes, I'm sure made a difference for a lot of people. It was still pretty hot at the end, but not as bad as it could have been, I suppose. In terms of today's ride, it was from Utica, New York to Troy, New York. It was our last full day in New York, as we are getting into Vermont tomorrow. You know what that means. That means a live segment as I cross the state line into Vermont. In any event, the ride, I started at 6:51 a.m. and at the start it was cloudy and the temperature was 69 degrees Fahrenheit with a feels like temperature of 71 degrees Fahrenheit. The humidity was 87% and the wind was 2.8 miles per hour from the southeast. At the end, by the way, a shout out to the person who suggested in the comments for my day 45 video to include the weather at the end. At the end, it was mostly cloudy. The temperature was 95 degrees Fahrenheit with a feels like temperature of 104. Holy cow, I felt like I was melting when I got to the hotel. As a matter of fact, when I got up to my room, I usually set the air conditioning to 68, 66. I like it on the chilly side. I got to my room, it was either 70 or 72, and it felt cold in the room. I have to admit, it felt really good. I have since turned it even lower because I do like it on the cold side. But even now at after 9 p.m., it's still pretty hot outside. Anyway, getting back to the day's ride. At the end of the ride, the wind was 8 miles per hour from the south-southwest. The wind didn't really pick up much today. I would say that the wind was really not a factor. The biggest factor today was the temperature and humidity. The length of today's ride was 101.94 miles, so it was a century ride. My average moving speed was 15.8 miles per hour, and I had a maximum speed of 31.6 miles per hour. I had a total moving time of 6 hours, 27 minutes, 59 seconds, and an elapsed time of 7 hours, 38 minutes, 30 seconds. My average heart rate was 116 beats per minute, and my max heart rate was 137 beats per minute. According to Garmin and Strava, I burned 1,960 calories. I had an average cadence of 69 RPM and a maximum cadence of 97 RPM. In terms of elevation gain, Ride with GPS said we were supposed to have 2,502 feet of elevation. According to Strava's map data, we only had 2,357. And according to Garmin's barometric data, we had 2,516 feet. According to my cadence sensor, I had a total of 24,897 pedal strokes. And according to Strava, my average power output was 103 watts. Although there were no Garmin climbs on today's ride, there was some climbing, a couple of hills. Probably the steepest one, came towards the end on the bike path that we took from Schenectady to Troy, which is surprising. Usually you don't have steep hills on these bike paths, but this one had a steep section. In terms of the route, we started in Utica, pretty much got on Route 5 almost immediately, took that all the way to Schenectady, at which point we went through city streets to pick up a bike path, which we took almost the rest of the way. And the route, both Route 5 and the bike path, were mostly along the Mohawk River. It was really beautiful. As a matter of fact, if you see any breaks in the trees here, the Mohawk River is to my right. We started in Utica. We rode through Herkimer, East Herkimer, Little Falls, St. Johnsville, Nelliston. Then we went across the Mohawk River to Fort Plain for the first SAG stop. There were actually 3 SAG stops. I only noted 2 of them for some reason in my notes for my voiceover. So, but we went back to Nelliston from Fort Plain, and then to the town of Palatine Bridge, Yosts, Fonda. Then we had a SAG stop at a highway rest area. Then we went through Tribes Hill, Fort Johnson, Amsterdam, Hoffman's, Wyatt's, Scotia. I think that may have been where the 3rd SAG was. I'm not positive. We then went into Schenectady, where we picked up a bike path that took us through Aqueduct, Dunsbach Ferry, Cohoes, and then at that point, I think, was when we got off of the bike path and went through Green Island and finally crossed the Hudson River, a river I'm very familiar with, and into Troy. So that was basically the route for today's ride. Tomorrow's ride is a difficult one also. It's, as I mentioned, we have a state line crossing. We are going into Brattleboro, Vermont. We're only staying in Vermont tomorrow night because then we continue on through New Hampshire and into Massachusetts for our final hotel of the trip. And then, of course, the day after our arrival in Burlington, Massachusetts, is the 19-mile ride to the beach for the wheel dip. Anyway, the trip to Brattleboro is, it's only 80.8 miles. Again, perspective, only 80.8. That's about an average length for us. However, it has 5,306 feet of climbing, which is more than double what we had today. So looks like it's definitely going to be a challenging day. In terms of the challenges from today, as I mentioned, the big one was the heat and humidity. I wisely chose not to try to keep up with the fast group or the fast people in my group from the start, and instead chose to just ride my pace. I didn't end up riding by myself for most of the time, or probably about half of the time. I rode with some familiar faces, and then A number of people decided the heat was just too much for them, and so by the end of the ride, I was pretty much riding by myself, because most of the people who rode the entire ride were people who were in the faster group, and most of the slower group, not all, but most, the heat was a bit too much for them, and so it is what it is. Anyway, there were some historic sites that we passed along the way. However, I wanted to get out of the heat, so I did not stop for anything other than to grab fuel. At one point, some of you have commented on, or at least one person has commented on how I stop to eat a gel. And that is true. I don't feel confident in my bike handling skills, or confident enough to try to consume a gel while riding without discarding anything on the side of the road. And so for me, I'd rather just pull over and take 1 minute to pull a gel out and eat it and put the wrapper away, and then continue riding. One of the people that I was riding with today, when we were at the first SAG stop, she said that she was going to teach me on this next leg how to eat a goo without stopping. And I told her, no, I was not going to learn that now. I've made it this far in the trip without getting hurt. I'm not taking any additional risks. Anyway, as irony would have it, about 10-ish minutes into that leg, I reached for my back pocket and realized I had forgotten to take more goo at the SAG stop, and I had none. And we were going about 18 miles between the first SAG and the second SAG. So I did not stop on that segment. I had said to her while we were riding that she certainly wasn't going to be teaching me how to eat a goo while riding on this leg, because I didn't have any with me. Unfortunately, she didn't hear me. It was funny in the moment, or I thought it was. In any event, I do apologize. There was one discontinuity. I think we just got past it. The steep section on the bike path, I had a mechanical issue, and I stopped to take care of that. I did stop the camera when I stopped. However, when I started going again, I forgot to restart the camera, and so I started it again a little bit later. Missed maybe at most a couple of miles. Anyway, so that's basically it for today's ride. As I said, tomorrow we go on to Brattleboro, Vermont, another state line crossing. And so I will see you tomorrow. That's all for now. All right, I am here at the Best Western Plus in Troy, New York. That was a great ride, but it is hot out. So I am going to go inside in the air conditioning. Well, until next time, stay safe out there.